Hey, fellow superhero cinephiles. Did you know that almost 30% of adults say they haven't read a book in the past year? The primary reason why is a lack of time. Well, Audible's here to help with the gift of found time. Thanks to Audible, you can listen to audiobooks like Marvel Comics, The Untold Story, or Slugfest, inside the epic 50-year battle between Marvel and DC. Read up on the history of superheroes in comics and movies with Grant Morrison's Super Gods. You can also check out Vanguard, my original superhero novel series, or try The Vril Agenda or The Adventures of Fortune McCall, both of which were written by our dearly departed host emeritus, Derek Ferguson. Whatever you're looking for, Audible has thousands of titles that you can consume while commuting, exercising, cooking, or just relaxing at home. And not only audiobooks, an Audible membership also gives you access to tons of content like podcasts, theatrical performances, and exclusive Audible originals that you won't find anywhere else. To give you a taste of what you can get, Audible has partnered with this show to provide listeners with a free 30-day trial. All you have to do is go to audibletrial.com/supercinemapod, and with your free trial, you get one free audiobook and 2 free Audible originals. In fact, you get to keep those titles even if you cancel before the trial is over. So what are you waiting for? Head on over to audibletrial.com/supercinemapod and start your free trial today.
Deep space.
Why?
Do you know what this is?
It's the bottle city of Kandor. One of your enemies stole it from Krypton before it exploded.
Brainiac. He used his technology to miniaturize the greatest city of my homeworld. I've been trying for years to restore the thousands of people who live there to regular size.
You found a way.
No, but I have found a suitable planet for them to colonize, and I'm taking them there. The thing is, it's very far away. Even under normal circumstances, it would take me 3 weeks to fly there and back. In my current condition, it'll take longer than that. Maybe longer than I have.
I don't understand.
It's what I've been keeping from you. I'm dying, Lois.
You won't die. You'll find a way out of this. We'll be together. Our children will go flying in Metropolis Park. Promise me.
We can't have children. Our biology is too different. Whatever happens, we'll never have more than this.
What do you always say? There's always a way.
I'm sorry, Lois. The work doesn't stop just because I'm dying.
Take your people to their new home. When you get back, I'll be right here waiting.
Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine. And a brief little story before we get started. So back when I was in high school, my parents forced me to do band after I'd done it in elementary and junior high school. And they said, look, do it for 2 years and then you can quit. And I said, okay, fine. And in the second year, we got a new teacher in, and who was, just literally just like less than 10 years older than me. And he was really cool. And even though I wasn't too interested in band, I decided, I think I'll stick around. He's actually making this kind of fun now. And then one year I was at the Chicago Comic-Con walking around the floor, and I see my band director walking the other direction. And then at that point I found out he was a big comic book fan, and had actually really gotten me into Superman comics at that time, which I'd kind of fallen away from the character other than watching like the Christopher Reeve stuff and the animated series when I was younger. But I'd kind of fallen away from the character. I never really picked up the comics, but this guy kind of got me into it. And he was really like the first person I knew in my social circle school life who had actually read comics. And because back then, for those of you who are more younger and are used to the current generation where superheroes are cool now. Back then, you didn't really talk about it if you like superheroes. So this was a guy who was who is older than me, who was open about how much he likes superheroes, and that's Bernie Gerstmayr. Bernie, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me, man.
It's great to have you on. It's great to see you again. So before we get started, why don't you talk a little bit about yourself and about your history with superheroes?
Man, so that was a pretty awesome intro, I gotta say. Like, you made me out to be like this pretty amazing person. Yeah, so I've been teaching now for, this is year 23. I've been at the same high school now since you and I met at Maine West in just outside Chicago. But I have loved comics since, honestly, I would say I was 6 years old. My dad took me to the hardware store with my brother when he had to go get stuff, and they had a spinner rack in the corner. He'd be like, "Hey, go pick out a book while I'm looking for what I need, and then you can pick one, and we'll go from there." And then I have hanging on my wall DC Comics presents Superman and the Doom Patrol. That's the first book he ever got me, and from there, there's something about who Superman was and how comics were laid out that I dug. And then once we got to the death of Superman in '93, that like kind of rebooted my love for comics. And then from late high school, well, all the way now till I'm 45, I've gotten to a point where I've collected all but I think 4 comics from 1976, the month I was born.
Oh, wow. Are you talking about the actual issues, or are you talking about like, trades and digital and everything?
Every single issue.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I started in 93. I moved forward and kept collecting. And then I started pushing back all the way to June 1976. And now I'm pushing back through the Bronze Age into the early 70s and late 60s. So it's just been I've got a very understanding wife, a loving pair of daughters who have now share my love for comics and all things like pop culture, superheroes, Star Wars, sci-fi, you name it. But yeah, I've got a lot of useless information in my head, according to some people, but according to my circles, I'm a fountain of knowledge.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to hang out with you, man, and talk about our movie tonight.
Absolutely, yeah. And hearing you talk about your daughters and that you got them into comics too, it gives me hope for this one here, because we're all my wife is very understanding, and I've gotten her into she loves the movies. So when we first started dating, she didn't like the movies, but I had converted her, and so now she likes the movies too. So we're able to get this one. I think we'll be able to get her on the right path eventually.
Nice, yeah. Our first daughter, Belle, was named after our first date, which was Beauty and the Beast. I got a hold of the second name, and if it was a boy, it was going to be Caleb Elliott or Kal-El. But we were blessed with a second girl. Lois was a little bit too much of an old lady name at the time, so we got to go with Lana. So Lana as Superman's high school girlfriend. She's now 14, and she's playing in my high school drumline, which is cool.
And if I remember correctly, Smallville was actually really big at that time too. So I think
and celebrating its 20th anniversary of starting it. Crazy.
Yeah. Well, you must be, loving it right now with all the Superman stuff we got going on. Like, I mean, I think right now we've got probably the best Superman I've seen since Christopher Reeve in Tyler Hoechlin on Superman and Lois.
That show is so solid. And if you're out there and listening, that show, like, give it like 3 episodes. The first 2 are really solid, but it doesn't take off, literally, until that 3rd episode. And then it just, if you're a Superman fan or just a lover of good storytelling in comics, it's wholesome, it's great, it's true to the story, and he is on point as Superman. So it's great.
Yeah. Most of the TV shows, I wait until they come out on HBO Max or Netflix and just binge them. But this one, it was so good, and like I had to make sure that my VPN works so I could watch it on the CW app every week when it comes out.
Nice. Yeah. And that was kind of weird with pandemic. We had to kind of wait a little bit. They had to stop and go there, and they only had 13 episodes, but they're green lit for season 2, man. And it's gonna be great.
Yeah. Well, today we are talking about All-Star Superman, and talking about great Superman. Like, this is based on what, me personally at least, is probably the greatest Superman story ever written, which is, same title, All-Star Superman, written by Grant Morrison and drawn by Frank Whiteley. So before we jump into the movie, I know we had talked before, we hadn't really had a chance to really reread the comic, but what were your memories of reading the comic when it came out, or when you first read it?
Well, crazy. Like in true DC fashion, you got a 12-part series that should have happened in a year, and it came out over 4 years. So, um, Frank Quitely has been one of my go-to favorite artists for years. And when they assigned him and Grant Morrison, I was a huge Authority fan. And when they were doing that book together, they had me. So
Right, when he was doing it with Mark Miller.
yeah, he was doing, and then Grant Morrison.
Oh, Grant Morrison did some of the
Grant
Authority?
Morrison
Oh, I
did
didn't know
the
that.
later Authority. It was crazy. And Frank Quitely, he has got such a defined, different look to how he approaches comic books. It's a little more bulky, like a little bit just fuller faces, and very, very much more cartooning than it is comic book art. But I love it. And you pair that with kind of the cool avant-garde style of what Grant Morrison brings to the book. Really cool. And I just remember really enjoying it because it had like a really cool like Silver Age vibe.
Yeah.
But brought it to the modern era, and everybody was like losing their poop over it. And even though it came out like sporadically and not as consistently, I was chomping at the bit, and I was so happy even when I got it in trades to finally read it again.
Yeah, it was. I'd come late to Quitely appreciation. I'd first discovered him through, I think it was the Earth 2 book that he did with Morrison, and then later Authority, and then New X-Men. And recently on my other podcast, me and a few guys are doing a reread of the New X-Men stuff, and going back and rereading the Quitely issues. One of the things that really stood out to me this time is just how kinetic his art is. Like, it's just it's like it moves on the page. It's brilliant. And now that I'm doing art myself, like, I'm noticing so much. I'm noticing what a master he really is at it.
Yeah, is that the New X-Men run? I feel like that's like there's a big Emma Frost arc.
Yeah.
Oh,
it was 114 to 154, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I remember taking out those trays at the library way too often to read those over and over again. I never pulled the trigger and bought them, but man, they're so good.
Yeah. Well, we're doing this whole read through now because it's the 20th anniversary, and just going back through those issues, and they're amazing. They're just as amazing as they were when they came out. But Quitely's art, I've gotten a brand new appreciation for it. But All-Star Superman, the All-Star books were kind of this weird thing that DC was doing back in I think it was the early aughts, when they had done, it was like this idea where these were going to be continuity free books, and they were going to be done by and the reason it was called All-Star was because they were getting like these big name creators. So they had Morrison and Quitely on Superman. They had Frank Miller and Jim Lee on Batman and Robin, which was just bizarre. And speaking of late books, 20 years later, that book still hasn't been finished.
Yeah. Well, funny thing is, All-Star Batman and Robin, I believe, is the first one. That actually started it and then never finished. But yeah, the All-Star run was a really cool idea. And how up are you current with certain books like right now?
I'm up to, I'm doing everything through trades now, and I get mostly when they come on sale. So I'm up to, I think, Bendis's second or third trade on the Superman stuff. I'm like 2 or 3 trades behind Snyder's Justice League, and I finished Tom King's Batman, so I haven't read any of the Tynion stuff.
Nice. Okay. The reason I say that is I feel like the Black Label stuff that's in the DC universe is kind of like what they were trying to do with All-Star in the early 2000s.
Oh, yeah. So
they're now, it's very much like, we got rid of Vertigo, but like Black Label's mature readers, but it's not continuity, but it's allowing them to tell stories they want to tell for very niche readers who love certain artists, certain writers, and I think it brings more people to the table as far as fans, which is really cool.
Yeah, I think it's a great, and this is something I've been wanting to see, DC and Marvel do for a long time, is do more of these like kind of continuity free stories. I think, I'm not sure if Tom King's Superman one is part of that, but I had recently read that, and that was really good when he goes through space.
Up and away.
Yes, yeah.
That is, if you're listening and watching and you want to find like a Superman maxi series with like the most heart you will find, that like defines who Superman is. That Tom King 12-parter that is worth every penny of that trade. So like, I swear Tom King is not sponsoring this podcast, but it should be. He should be. Tom.
He should be. Yeah, it would be. I did get kind of some All-Star Superman vibes from it, just like that, because like just like all the Morrison stuff really captured that Silver Age stuff. It seemed like Tom King really kind of captured like more of the modern age Superman in that.
Yes. Well, and I agree with you. I miss the Elseworlds kind of mentality that, hey, let's just tell some good stories that everybody wants to hear, like how bananas would certain things be if we did this. It's kind of like how Marvel's What If is doing really well on Disney Plus right now. Everybody's losing it because of that. I really think we need to harken back to that idea with DC and just tell good stories. And just even if it was like 4 times a year, just bring that for the readers.
Yeah. The speaking of that too, the White Knight stuff and Batman, I'm not sure if you read those yet, but those were really good too.
I'm one behind. I read the original, but I got to read the Curse one.
I just read the Cursed one. It's not as good as the original. The original was brilliant, but it is still solid.
That's really cool.
But now, so jumping to the movie, this was actually, it was written by Dwayne McDuffie. It came out like, I think the day after he died.
He didn't get to see the film's release. That was the sad thing. And for those who don't know much about Dwayne McDuffie, I mean, most of honestly what your age to me, and possibly even younger, if you watched any Justice League, Unlimited, Justice League cartoons, even some of the like maybe late Superman animated, and then Static Shock and that kind of stuff. He did so much of the writing, the story editing. He created Static. He worked for Milestone. Dwayne was an incredible like force to be reckoned with, and just a kind soul. And we lost him too soon. And he wrote this movie, which is so incredidu
Yeah. In fact, not only Static, but I had a guy on who's a big Milestone fan a few episodes ago, Damon Thompson, and we got into a discussion about Dwayne McDuffie, and if I'm not mistaken, he created like, or at least co-created like almost all the Milestone characters, all the original stuff.
Him, and then I forget who the other creator was, but they did there's a really cool documentary about the branch off from the major like DC Marvel, and it's about Image, it's about Milestone, and it's really about that whole era where creators went, no, we're going to branch off and do our own stuff. And Milestone's pretty incredible, and it didn't get the kind of due that it was deserved.
Yeah. And I think it was way too ahead of its time, is probably but now it's getting the resurgence. DC's, they're got a new Milestone line of stuff coming out. They're going to be collecting the older stuff. And there's a new, I believe it's Michael B. Jordan is developing a Static Shock movie as well.
Yeah. And I mean, basically HBO Max should just hold on tight, because it seems like there's so much content coming their way, which is really exciting.
Oh yeah. And I liked how they worked them into Young Justice too, because you had Icon and Rocket on there. And I think Static was on there as well, wasn't he?
Static was on there. Yeah. That's another great show. That's something everybody should check out, is the old Young Justice all the way through the new stuff now.
Yeah. Now the movie was also directed by Sam Liu, who, this guy is prolific. I mean, he's like I think like him and Andrea Romano.
Yep.
I'm a little bit suspicious of them. I think they like kill the competition, because they like do everything as far as direction and voice casting.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So there's like a current DC. Was it called DCEU? Is it the extended universe?
That was the live action ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the animated stuff, it was DC. It was like the DC original animated universe or something along those lines. Now,
and it has started like this All-Star Superman is one of the last like ones that was kind of outside of that. Like there is a run of like 14 or 15 movies that are actually supposed to be in the same universe.
Yeah, I think it started with Batman and Son, or Son of Batman.
Yeah, and then like I know it was the Flashpoint Paradox is in there.
That's right. Yeah, Flashpoint kind of started off, then came Son of Batman.
The one that is I think the last one is, I think that was also Sam Liu, and it's the
is that the Justice League Dark one, the Apocalypse one?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. And I did not go in thinking I would love that movie, and I was like, I'm gonna watch the crap out of this like 2 more times, because it was solid.
It was, you know, what was weird about it is like, I had held off on watching that because everybody had been bashing it online.
Yeah.
And then I finally got and I saw it. I'm like, this is actually pretty good. I don't know what
really
people
good. It's very rough. It's like that line is so violent. I was watching with my 17-year-old, and she's like, "This is amazing, but really rough." But I don't think we would have gotten that line of movies without Sam Liu and Andrea pushing the envelope with things like All-Star Superman.
Yeah.
And some of the films right before it as well.
So what do you think of the All-Star Superman movie?
Okay, so all right, I know you're like this, but you tend to argue with yourself, right?
I think I know where you're going. Yeah.
So you form an opinion, and then you like, okay, no, maybe I'm wrong about that opinion, and then you're like, no, I'm gonna go back and I feel the same about this. So as I'm watching, I purposely waited to rewatch it last night. I wanted it as fresh as I could in my brain before we talked about it. There's the one thing I like don't like about the movie, but I like about the movie is that it's got this disjunctness to it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But then, so here's where the Bernie argues with himself moment in my thinking is the same reason that I hate the disjunctness of the film is the same reason I love it, because it does match how the comic is.
Yeah.
Like how All-Star Superman is not a running story arc.
Right.
It's vignettes. And that's what I think if they sold this and did a little bit better editing job, I think if they did more fade outs, if they did some more transitional work and were more sly and clever about that, we would have understood that they are separate vignettes. When you combine them together and the way they edited this, it is jarring and confusing as all hell from a viewing standpoint if you don't know anything about this book.
I felt exactly the same way rewatching it. And I didn't notice it the first time around when I had first seen it, but it jumped out to me this time around. And I'm just like, if you've read the comic book, you know where all the issue breaks are in here.
Oh,
it's just, it is, like you said, it's so disjointed, and it feels like you're marathoning a TV show just without the intros and the credits.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah. And not like one of the long form storytelling TV shows. I'm talking like, like doing episode, like you're like watching The Simpsons or something.
Oh yeah. And then just pretending they're all one jammed up story, which is so confusing. So again, like I don't not like it because of that. But if you're going in with no history about All-Star Superman, you got to stop. Like, so as you're listening to this and you're like, ooh, I should definitely watch this. Stop. Go, like, find a trade, go on the DC app, do what you got to do, read at least 5 or 6 of the 12 and just see the style, and it's going to make you love the movie more. My brain, and you and I talked about this, like we knew we were not going to have time to reread. I kind of just quickly skimmed a little bit of the trade. I was like, oh, okay, that's right. I had to pause the movie last night because I was getting kind of pissed. I was like, okay, this is only an hour, 15 minutes, and I'm already mad after like 20 minutes. But I was upset because I loved the way they're approaching staying true to the books.
Yeah.
But it's just very confusing if you're not a real dig in kind of fan.
I think the format really kind of works against them in that way. And part of it is because when this movie was made, they were doing, and I'd done some research on this, they were airing them on Cartoon Network in like hour-long blocks or something like that, or 2-hour-long blocks. And that was one of the reasons why, like, it had to fit in within this 80-minute time slot. And that really works against it, because something like All-Star Superman, the best way to adapt this would really be like as like a 12-episode miniseries. And each episode you just adapt one of the different issues.
Yeah, I would have loved to seen this. Do you remember I think Cartoon Network was doing it, like they were like shorts.
Oh yeah. And then they were also on I think they're also on the DC Universe app as well.
Yeah, I think so. And they did a few.
Oh no,
like,
the CW app. That was it. It was the CW app.
Thank you. That's what it was. But there was like a Superman Shazam and a Superman Black Adam. They did a few shorts, and in that format, it worked really well. I would have loved to seen this as like a 15-minute episode or even 21-minute. Just do 6 of them. You could do 6 of them. They could have expanded a few of these. They could have brought in some of the stories they left out. But ultimately, if when I do podcasts, I'm that guy that takes a ton of notes. And in my notes, it looked like ridiculous. So I had to like go in, and then I had to like separate my notes out. So really, essentially, this movie's in 5 parts. Maybe 6 if you count the epilogue towards the end.
Right.
And if you think of it in that, it's great. So anybody listening, when you listen to this podcast and you're gonna go, like, pause it, get some food, come back, pause, like watch the next section.
Yeah. And I think it really would have benefited a lot if they had like you said, like title cards or something, especially because the book, the whole concept of the book was like the 12 labors of Superman, right? Like the 12 labors of Hercules and all that. So if you had like, some sort of title card that separated each of the labors, it would have made a lot more sense.
Come on, even Bananas Zack Snyder figured it out when he did the 4-hour Justice League.
Oh God,
like he knew how to put a black title card. That's a whole other podcast.
Don't get me started. I've covered it. Yeah, and we've. When she was younger, when she was first born, we had my regular co-host before he passed away. We had her on. I'd had her on every time Zack Snyder came up. She would start crying because she knew, Daddy's gonna get started. My buddy, who I do stuff for, and I'm going to plug his podcast towards the end, but like we have there should be like a bingo card. Like if Zack Snyder doesn't come up, or if how sucky the DC app is, that doesn't come up, like that's like an automatic bingo win, or it's like a drinking game. Yeah. Oh God, if you did a drinking game with Zack Snyder, I think you'd probably get alcohol poisoning with this show. But one of the things I did like about this is just like the comic did, it really does show the love for the Silver Age stuff, and and a lot of times when movies or TV shows, when they go back to the Silver Age, they do it in kind of a winky notion and like and almost like a look at how ridiculous this was back then. This does not feel like that. This is very much a love letter to the Silver Age stuff. They honored it, and it wasn't hokey. They hugged it. They went, this is some of the best stuff for people. Like they were honoring fans of this Superman, but made it oddly modern. Yes, yeah. Where like you could see it working even today, and it wasn't a throwback. It was this could work today. Do you want to go through kind of like our favorite moments, like in each of the movie, or that sounds good? Yeah. So what? Let you go first. Your idea. So what was one of your favorite moments? Yeah. Let's bounce back and forth. So one of my favorite things is the key to the fortress. I love that part. That was something. It's very minimal in the book, but like because again, it happens on like a panel here and there. But it was just the way you can see it in the like live action, so to speak, animated. But it's just a clever trope where like she says like, "Where's the big golden key?" And he's like, "Oh no, like it wasn't." What did he say? It wasn't. He said it wasn't secure enough. Yeah, and he takes this little key out. Got this big ass golden key and this little key, and then she's like, seriously? And what did he say? How much it weighed? It was some ridiculous. It was like it was like half a million tons or something like that. Yeah, because he carved it out of dwarf star material. That was very like lighthearted, but just a cool concept. Yeah, that again you took it from, but made it really cool, and it comes up when the 2 Kryptonians come back too. Yes, yeah. When she says, you should have had your key more secure, and she gives it to the robot and it breaks his arm. Yes, but I think he drops it in his hand. Like that was one of my favorite moments. What do you got? What's one that you really enjoyed? You know what? I really love the conversation between Lois and Superman right before he goes off to take the Bottle City of Kandor to its new home. Like that was a very emotional conversation, and Christina Hendricks I think is really the MVP of this movie as far as acting goes. Like she's no Dana Delaney, but she was definitely the best in this, the best actor out of this whole movie.
I love that you go back to Dana Delaney, because honestly, like when I hear Lois Lane as an animated voice, that's always my barometer.
Yeah.
My brain was like, when I saw the cast, like Christina Hendricks, like, okay, she was great on Firefly as Saffron. She was in Mad Men. All right. But no, but like really, she does embody like a tough but very, very warm Lois Lane, which I really love. And that scene is really special. I believe he says, is it when he says, I'll always come back to you?
That's what he says. Because he says, this is when he tells her that, that he's dying, and her, her like emotional plea. She's like, no, you always find a way. You're Superman. You'll beat this. You'll come back. Right. Our kids will go flying to Metropolis Park. And then he just says very melancholily, we can't have children, right? Our biology is too different. Like it was just, there was, and I got a lot of issues with, I think it was James Denton who did the voice of Superman. He doesn't, like he's not that great, but I thought he did really well in that scene. Like just that melancholy in that.
When is that when he says, I'll love you, Lois Lane, till the end of time? I think
so. Maybe.
Yeah. There's a few really heartfelt moments. I mean, Jamie Denton, he's okay. I mean, we got to give him some love. He's a Chicago dude. But honestly, it was very, I was trying to figure out what's the best way to describe it. It was like stoic. There was not a whole lot of, there was not a lot of rise and fall. There wasn't a lot of depth. It was very like not monotone, but you know what I mean? It was a little bit too
monotone is actually what I was thinking myself.
Okay. Yeah. So it was a little too like plain yogurt for me, which I was like, come on. Like, I mean, these stories are huge, and just give us a little bit more.
Right. Yeah. So she really sold that for me, and that was probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie. Do you have another moment you wanted to mention?
Random little things too. The massive journal.
Yes.
Like that was such a Silver Age kind of throwback, where you've got this like massive stone journal of tablets that's on the wall that he's using his heat vision. It's like instead of writing a journal in your hands, you decided to use a drive-in theater. Like he's shooting symbols on a drive-in movie theater plate that he just turns to the next stone page, which is again very, very throwback old school Superman kind of vibe. Like everything's big. Nobody else can touch it except Superman. Nobody else can use it. But I just found it, again, fun. Like, I think that was a fun touch to the movie that wasn't corny, but fun.
Yeah. Another one, and for me, it's a lot of the emotional moments really work for me here. The conversation with Martha at Jonathan's grave, right? And just that moment when she's like, "You look thin. Have you been eating?" And he's like, "Mom, I'm Superman." And she's like, "Yeah, and I'm your mother." Right, like
she'll always be mocked.
Yeah.
That's a sad scene. I mean, he's visiting Pa's grave. That always gets me. Like I'm always a proponent of Jonathan and Martha Kent being alive.
Yeah,
I don't love any Superman where the Kents are dead.
I understand. I definitely get that perspective. Although I keep coming back to Superman the movie and Jonathan's funeral, like, and when he says, all those things I could do, all those powers, and I couldn't even save him. Like, I feel like that is Superman at his most humbled, right? When he realizes that even though he can do all these great things, he is not a god. And I always contrast it with Man of Steel when he says, "I let my father die." I'm like, you're taking that humanity aspect out in that moment then.
Right. And see, like, again, that's another Bernie argues with himself moment. But like, because like Superman the movie is in probably still my top 10 movies of approach, filming, scoring, you name it. But the reason I say like I want Pa Kent there is Ma is the loving, warm, I'm still gonna be your Midwestern mom kind of vibe. I feel like Pa is the heart of who Superman truly is. Like Pa is the human to the Kryptonian. Yeah. And anytime, whether it's John Schneider on Smallville, even even honestly, as much as Kevin Costner's not my favorite, a lot of the things he says is very human.
I think if he had a better script, I think he would have been perfect.
Oh, and I love Kevin Costner, the actor.
Yeah.
But I think again, a great actor can only do so much with crappy words. So,
exactly. Yeah.
But there was that kind of humanizing. I love my son. Yes, you should do things for the world, but be careful because the world sucks.
Yeah. And you're right. John Schneider, I think, really did capture that. I think that was one of the things I soured on Smallville in the later seasons just because a lot of reasons. John Schneider was one of the reasons I kept coming back. And once he was gone, like I kept running out of reasons why to keep watching.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, I am a purist, unfortunately, to my curse, because I will always finish, like even a crappy book. I was like, I really should stop reading this. I'm going to be disappointed, but I have to know. I either have to know, will it save itself or will it get so bad? But yeah, Smallville is the same way. When Jonathan Kent leaves, rather, not to be confused with young John Kent. But yeah, that's very different. But I do love this scene in this movie because it is Superman saying goodbye again to Pop.
Yeah,
like he's already said goodbye, but he's truly saying goodbye to the human connections that are on Earth because he knows he's gonna go. He's gonna die, whether it's gonna be here or off world. But it is such a cute moment. Like mom, like every mom's still gonna say like, "Are you taking care of yourself?"
Exactly. Yeah.
No matter any one of our moms, like, and we could be like fit as a fiddle. It's like, but are you eating? Are you okay? Are you hungry?
Yeah. I got definite like flashback. Like when I watched that scene, I thought of my grandma like that because she's like that all exactly. And one of the things that kind of disappointed me is that we didn't have the scene where he goes back in time and interacts with Jonathan because I thought that was such a great moment in the comics.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I want to talk about is kind of the stuff they cut out. Like that was one thing I was disappointed they had cut out. The Jimmy stuff, the Bizarro World stuff, that I was okay with, but I think the one moment I think that definitely should have been in this movie was when he saves the girl, right? The girl who's about to jump.
Oh, yes. Okay, so I wondered about that. What was the rating? Is this PG-13? It had to be, right?
Something like that. Doesn't say on the Wikipedia, but it was probably like PG-13, something like that, something around those.
I wonder about that because like I thought about from a content standpoint, like if you really look at the content, how they're rating things, it's not just about like violence or language, but it's about some dramatic content that can make a rating. And if you're adding in the suicide or mental health card, that could change a whole lot from a target audience standpoint, or even honestly, studio execs might have had their hand in that.
Right.
I think that would have made such an impact. Even if you start the movie with that, I think that could have made a huge impact.
Oh yeah, I mean, you could have put that moment like pretty much anywhere in because it happens at the end of the comic book, I believe, in like issue 10. But you could put that moment in anywhere, like especially like after I actually think putting it at the beginning. In fact, after he comes back from space, that would be the perfect moment to put it in because it shows a contrast between these different things Superman does. Just like in Superman the movie, how he's in that first night of Metropolis, how he's he's stopping criminals, he's rescuing helicopters, he's saving the president, and then he pulls a cat out of a tree.
Yes, I think that's what this movie could have used because if you look through the list of this movie, it's very Superman's cast of characters, Superman's rogue gallery. But that's it.
Yeah.
We don't see why Superman's important to Earth.
Yeah.
Like, he saves people, but we don't see the people.
Exactly.
Like, that scene is him being super, but not because of his powers. And that's my biggest argument with people who are like, I don't understand why Superman is your favorite hero. I'm like, well, because if you take away his powers, he's still the best of us.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect example of how he's basically doing social work with that woman.
Yeah.
And that to me is I did miss that. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. That's a
Yeah.
great point.
I mean, that's such an iconic moment. Like, people who have never read All-Star Superman, they know that scene because it's been memed and shared so many times as like the quintessential Superman moment.
Right.
It reminded me a lot of, do you remember when Joe Casey did his Adventures of Superman run?
Yes.
It was after the Worlds at War stuff, but he had done like almost exclusively, he had just done these human interest Superman stories with Superman just helping people, and it was brilliant. And DC, if anyone from DC is listening, please collect those because I want to reread them.
Yeah, and I don't know if they ever put those in trade.
I don't think so. They're slowly getting some of the, because they came out with the first trades of the Loeb Kelly run in that era.
Yes.
So I think they're slowly working up to it. But Casey didn't come along until after Return to Krypton, I believe.
Yeah, and Joe Casey just came off. He was doing a lot of Image stuff and Wildstorm stuff. He did Wildcats, which is another huge book I love.
Oh God, that's another one that I literally just tweeted about the other day. DC reprint Joe Casey's Wildcats.
It's so good, and they have them in trade, and I have them. They're out of print trade. Oh my gosh, but they're so good because again, they're very human stories, and that's the one thing that I'm glad you brought up because I do think that All-Star Superman essentially missed the boat on that. Like it was All-Star Superman needs to have a humanistic quality about why Superman is Superman.
Yeah.
And the only really time we see it is the Ma Kent Pa Grave visit. That's the only time we really see it, and his Lois stuff.
I'd argue we also get a little bit in a kind of way with when he helps the Kryptonians because it shows that they try to kill him, they mock him and everything, and they're dying, and he goes out of his way to help them.
Yeah, and that was one of my favorite lines too, because like you really see Superman explaining what grace and forgiveness look like.
Yeah,
like because they're so confused, but they're like, we're dying and you're wanting to help us, but we were so terrible to you.
Yeah,
and now we understand who you really are, and you're still showing us mercy. Yeah, and he's like, well, yeah, like you're my people, and I care for you, and I want to help you, just like anybody else. So I would agree with you. That's great.
That brings me to another thing that I kind of, and this may seem stupid, like I'm sure some people would be like, come on, you're going too far now. But when he kills the Sun Eater, when he kills Solaris, right, in the comic book, right, he gives him mercy, and and he gives it's tough love, right? He says, the Solaris begs for mercy, and Superman says, "You'll live," but the Sun Eater still survives. The Solaris still survives. In this, he says, "I have no mercy left," and I'm like, "That is
okay."
Yeah,
and I mentioned that. So I have quotes, I have stories, and then I have thoughts in my last notes. And one of my thoughts was Superman out of mercy? ?
Yeah.
That was, first of all, that's not in the book. Second of all, that's a weird, left turn from everything that we know about Superman or we've seen about Superman, even if all you know is this movie. So that was confusing. You go from the Kryptonian scene and then that. I don't understand that.
Yeah, I have no idea what was going on with that scene. It just it took me out of the movie when I got to that. I'm like, wait a minute. And I knew I couldn't remember the story itself, right? I couldn't remember it from the comic when I was watching it last night. And I was like, this does not feel right. There's just something about this that's not gelling with me. And then I went back and I'm like, oh, okay, now I know why.
Yeah. And now isn't that Solaris? I feel like, is that Solaris character? Is that from the DC 1 million?
I believe so. Yeah. And it was from
did that.
Yeah, Morrison did that. He brought back, because there's also when Superman's doing showing him the Lois the Time Telescope.
Yeah.
Talks to Cal Kent, the Superman 1 million. He's wearing the same costume.
Right. And it's funny, there's things that you go, I know they were not good books. I know they were not well loved. But sometimes conceptually you go, that was a pretty good idea. And it says, unfortunately, it doesn't always land well. But you knew but if you had a few extra months, you could have pulled that one out.
Yeah.
But Solaris was a great thing they grabbed from that. I did love the Sun Eater that he was feeding in the fortress.
Well, I mean, that's another thing that felt so weird about when he goes after Solaris then, because I mean, this is a sun eater. It could destroy the galaxy, and he's still helping it.
Yes. Like it's just so interesting to me. And then it's like, no mercy. It's like, what? Yeah. So that did throw me. All right. Can we talk about the ending?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm okay with endings being like offering you wonder or making you think about things past the movie. What I didn't love was like the question of, is Superman dead or is Superman in the sun?
Yeah.
Like, so what do you think? What do you think the answer is?
You know what? I wonder if, because that wasn't in the comic, right?
It was not in the comic.
Okay. I wonder if McDuffie was trying to tie it back to DC 1 million, because there was that thing in DC 1 million about how Superman had spent like, all this time in the sun.
Right. So
I wonder if that was just McDuffie being cute or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And like, it's tough because there are like, obviously there's Easter eggs for like people that are like deep dive kind of fans. I always worry though, like if you do something like that, when it's a very small audience, like there's a tip of the hat to certain people, but I was like, oh, come on. Like just say like yes or no, even if it's like they had that drawing, but they didn't either show them or don't.
Yeah.
Like make it speculation, but don't make it confusing. I think that's what was a little frustrating from my end. I wanted to know, like, is he alive? Because clearly we just said there's Cal Kent in the future.
Right. Well, that's something else, because remember, Lois mentioned he kind of looks like my dad, right? Yes. And then we get the end there when and this is one change I liked, where it's Lex Luthor gives Leo Quintum the genome, right?
Yes.
He and where in the comic book it's Superman who gives it to him.
Right.
So I did like that, like Luthor redeeming himself in that way, and that whole idea of him seeing the world in a whole new way when he has those powers, and it just broadening his perspective. And I thought that was really well done in this.
I kind of didn't want that scene to end. Like I wanted them to continue to expand it just a little bit longer, so that like he gets more opportunities to be the Lex Luthor that Clark says. Like oh, I wrote it down. Where is it? Hold on. I love this line. Here's your chance to prove it, Lex. I know there's good in you. Be the person I know you can be.
And that's such a Superman line too. The fact that even his greatest enemy, he's not giving up on.
Yeah. Yep. Other things that I like really dug. I love the Lois losing her shit.
Like, you know what? I was thinking about that because I had reread some of the comic book, and I reread that issue, and
it's weird.
It felt weird in the issue because it almost feels like it doesn't feel like Morrison had set up the paranoia enough in that issue, but it works very well. What do you want? You want to talk?
Like, see, Dad, hold on to me.
Yeah,
show me the ball, Dad.
And but in the movie, the music and the way the animation works, it totally sells the idea that there's something else going on here with her.
Oh yeah. And there was I loved her panic. I loved the way they approached the back room. I love the way they approached the costume being made for her for the next vignette. I loved all of that. But that had a right amount of weird mystique to it. That it wasn't really in the comics very well, but they did a nice job of that.
I also liked when and this is from the comics as well, but when Samson and Atlas, the competition, and he pulls Lois aside and he's like, why are you, because it's very much a nod to those old Silver Age issues when they'd be playing off, and it was a very childish, right, in those issues. But this one, they give her a logical reason for why she's doing it. She's like, look, it's my birthday. You were, you were kind of a dick about the Clark thing, so let me have some fun here.
Yeah. I do love Superman in the white suit.
I was thinking about it, and I like that they used the original logo on that.
Yeah. Yep. I love that. I did have a good laugh at the Kryptonian formal wear.
Yes.
Like Superman in a kind of weird hoodie.
That was a little bit weird, yeah. And that was from the comic too. I'm just like, I mean, come on, Quietly, you're better than this. You could take a little more time on that aspect of it.
And again, that's very niche Quietly though. Like
Mhm.
he likes to throw in things that like he thinks might look good,
Mhm.
and we might go, dude, that's bananas. What are you
Yeah.
doing? And he's like, it's fine, let it be. Like, yeah, man. Like can we real fast? So for those that don't know, I know you said like band director, but like I'm a huge music score nut,
Mhm.
and I do think that the score for this movie added a ton.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
It really was very sweeping. I feel like we've gotten in the past movies, especially the animated ones, not always the best.
Mhm.
They're a little more formulaic.
Yeah.
This really added a lot of emotion into it. And and again, I love the composer, but I didn't get a chance to look it up. I'm going to look it up really fast because I really do love what he did.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too, and that kind of ties in what I was saying about the Lois paranoia scene. It's the music that really sells that build up to it, and
Oh,
and at the end, the theme. It's not quite the John Williams Superman theme, but it's very evocative of it.
and it makes more sense now. So Christopher Drake is the composer, and he did a lot of the video game scores.
Oh, okay.
So for both Injustices, for Arkham City, Arkham Asylum, all those, he wrote the
Oh,
scores
okay.
for those. So again, it made sense. Like it did not sound like the typical kind we got from back films. But I did want to mention that because that always adds an extra little, because of who I am and what I do for a living. That adds a little extra emotion. Like, oh man, that moment really hit for me because of the way that swept through as a chord.
Yeah.
How did you feel? I think they did a nice job from an art direction standpoint. That they paid good honor to Frank Whiteley's work, but didn't try to mimic it too much. Like,
Yeah, I thought it was I think you hit it right there. I thought the Superman's lips kind of looked a little bit weird. That'd be my biggest thing. But other than that, because Quietly, even though his art has this cartoonish style to it, it's also at the same time oddly detailed. So it's very difficult to animate that. And I think they did a pretty good job. They got the kind of like the basic outlines of it, and one of the great things about Quietly's art is his characters are different. Like it's like a lot of artists, you see it, they draw the characters all the same, and if not for the coloring or for the costumes, you could not tell them apart.
Yeah.
Quietly is one of those artists who really takes the time to differentiate the characters, which is probably why his work takes so damn long to finish.
It really takes so long. Yeah. And like, so we talked about New X-Men. Even how he approaches Professor X.
Yeah.
He's not just a bald dude. Like, he's very meticulous about like wrinkles, crow's feet, all like different things, like how the lips look, like you said earlier. That does not translate to an animated. Like you can't move that from cell to cell. It's very frustrating and takes forever.
Yeah. Even just doing a comic book, like that level of detail is because you got to redraw that stuff time and time again. I'm starting to do a comic book myself now, and it's a lot of work. So
you got to be really careful of continuity. If you're gonna do it on one, you better do it on the next. And,
exactly. Yeah. Also with the body types, I just want to quickly mention this about New X-Men because this is one I love mentioning, and that's his Cyclops, right? Because ever since like the 80s, 90s, there's been this tendency to draw Cyclops with like a standard superhero physique, but the whole thing about him is that he's a skinny guy. It's why he was called. It's why his nickname is Slim. And Quietly is like the only artist in like 40 years who's actually drawn him thin.
Yep. I mean, even if you go back to the Jim Lee stuff, like that's not what Cyclops should look like.
Exactly. Yeah.
We got to remember too that this is a Bruce Timm production. So if you look carefully from scene to scene, you see this very interesting hybrid of Frank Quietly and Bruce Timm, like animated series stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like every now and then you're like, oh, like did I see like a Batman animated? Did I just see a Superman? It goes from Quietly chubby to like JLU rounded a little bit. And I really, you know what? I dig it. I don't always love the newer anime style of some of the newer films. I totally get what they're doing. I like it, but it's just not my style as much.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate it. I did like this. I could watch more in this vein a lot.
Yeah, I thought I thought the art was really good, and I did notice some of that. That I've been doing a lot of Bruce Timm studies lately,
Nice.
like in my sketchbook and stuff, and so I did notice a bit of that coming through. One more thing I wanted to mention, and this is an ongoing debate about this book about Leo Quinta. And so like the theory the big fan theory is that he's Lex Luthor time traveling from the future. Morrison himself has said, well, no, he's just Superman's scientist friend. And he had originally planned to have him have some connection to the New Gods, but that didn't end up getting in the final version. I don't know if you had any thoughts about that.
I never. Yeah, I don't know. Is it supposed to be Lex Luthor's like kin from the future?
I think some people say that he's Lex Luthor himself and he's time traveled from the future. But other people would say that he's Lex Luthor's like descendant time traveled from the future.
And I would go more with the latter.
I would too myself, yeah.
Because I feel like if it was Lex Luthor's great grandkid, think about how Telephone and even history books kind of like some of the fat is trimmed and you just get like the very, very specific things.
Right.
Lex's evil brain might not translate through the generations, but some of the incredible things that like Superman's DNA possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've got a great grandkid of Lex Luthor and knows the scientific innovations that his great grandfather did, wouldn't you want to go back and try to encourage him to be a better person?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So like I totally can go with that one, but I also kind of see, Quentin could be like a really cool version of like Emil Hamilton.
Right. Yeah.
I can vibe either way with how they go with it. Either way, I love the character actually.
Yeah. I wish there was a little bit more of him, both in the comic book and in this movie. I thought he was interesting, and plus, you get someone like Alexis Denisof to voice him. Would have been great to give him a little bit more room to shine because that guy's a master
and more to do. Yeah. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else, buddy, that like really stood out to me.
One thing for me is I did love how they had replicated the opening and they'd cut it with the action scenes.
Yes.
And
like the montage.
Yes, the montage, and they used Quietly's actual art. I thought that was really well done. Another thing too is I really liked. I'm not sure, can't remember who did the voice, but I really liked the guy who did. I really liked this depiction of Lex Luthor. And
it's a very weird choice. It's Anthony LaPaglia. So he was. Do you remember the show Without a Trace?
Sounds familiar, but I'm not.
All right. So it was like when CSI was exploding. CBS was trying to redo. So they did a lot of like missing cases. Without a Trace was the CSI version of Missing People.
Oh, okay.
And Anthony LaPaglia was the star. Very like calculating, cold, but a very, very good actor. It took me a while to place it because I couldn't figure out. It wasn't like somebody trying to do Clancy Brown, but it was if there was somebody trying to imitate him, it wasn't bad.
No, it was really good. Yeah. And I just love that they showed this movie because I think sometimes there's a tendency to downplay Superman's intelligence.
Yes.
And I love that this movie didn't do that. It showed him being like intellectually curious. It showed him being able to outsmart Luthor. Like when he says, yeah, I knew about the robot. I've been on to you since day one.
I loathe any writer that doesn't make Superman super smart.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. Like based on his powers of, and like his ability to read quickly and to gather knowledge quickly and all of it. He'd be very intelligent.
Yeah, and that's another thing I liked about the fortress scene is the fact that he does have all these interests, right? Where he's like, yeah, I'm sewing, I'm restoring ships, I'm mapping the human genome, and I just like that's what that was something Morrison had said about Superman in interviews. Said that Superman stories should be, they're like, he should be like the most curious person around. You know, he should be wanting to find out about stuff. And one of the best things I like about his Superman is this idea that everything just comes effortlessly to him, right? He doesn't strain, you know, he's not, you know, he's basically like a big kid in a lot of ways. Like that scene with Lois, it's like a little kid showing you showing you around their room. And I love that.
I mean, you also think he's one of the few characters besides Green Lantern who can really travel the universe.
Yeah.
Like he should be out and about, not collecting, but learning.
Yeah.
And I really like this depiction of the fortress because it's not a collection, it's hobbies.
Yes. Yeah.
It's learning, it's learned. He's like trying to figure out things. But it's not the intergalactic zoo. That's right. I don't like that fortress. I like the maker space kind of museum of science and industry approach.
Yes. Yeah. No, yeah, I thought that was really well done. Any other things you wanted to mention about this?
No, man, I really appreciated the assignment, so to speak. You know, I'm glad the choices you gave me, and I was happy to go back because I watched this when it first came out 10 years ago, which is weird to even say. But I remembered enjoying it. But again, when you're doing something for a podcast or you're doing a deep dive, it's fun to really analyze a little bit more, both good and bad. I really enjoy this stuff.
Yeah, same here. And it's a great movie. It's got flaws, right? It's not as good as the source material. You know, what movie is, but it does a pretty good job of getting the main beats across. And because the main thing Morrison wanted to do with that book was to tell a Silver Age Superman story that would speak to people in the modern day. And I think this movie does a good job of translating that.
Yeah, I would agree. I totally agree.
Okay, so anything you want to promote before we close up for?
Yeah, so the podcast that I'm working on a lot, my good friend Anthony Desiato does for people that are Superman fans. It's called Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman's fan journey. He does everything from comics to the movies to media to he's even done stuff on the ethics of Superman, how you found faith weaved into certain things of Superman. He's done dives on the Snyder stuff, all the different versions. But again, Digging for Kryptonite, I've done a number of episodes with him. We just did 2.5 hour podcasts on the death and funeral of Superman and the reign and return of Superman. He did an amazing 8-part series called From Crisis to Death, and it covered from the John Byrne Superman stuff all the way to the death of Superman. It was quite an awesome series, but I'm working on that with him. But yeah, I'm doing a lot more with All Yeah Comics in Skokie here outside Chicago and becoming part of their community. So if you're in the Chicagoland area, come check out our store. We'd love to have you visit. But yeah, so I'm forging a path out of teaching over the next 10 years into the comics world, and hopefully I'll be on more podcasts and at a comic convention community near you. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I had heard the Bronze Age episode you guys did and really liked, which actually kind of spurred me to invite you on to do this episode. So yeah, that was a really good episode, and it made me interested in hearing more about his show. I was actually just looking at the podcast feed the other day, and I saw the Death of Superman stuff on there. So, and I had reread those fairly recently because they'd come on sale fairly recently on Comixology, and that's cool about the comic store. You know, I'll have to probably drop by when I'm in town in December.
Yeah, we should get together. If you're in, when are you coming in December? Because C2E2 is in town that time frame.
Oh, okay. You know, we'll talk more about it once we close up the episode. Nice. Once Elena stops, singing along or whatever she's doing here. I think she's trying to play us out.
Well, listen, thanks so much for having me on the show, dude.
Thanks for coming on. Anytime you want to come back on, you're more than welcome. So that does it for this episode of Superhero Cinephiles. SuperheroCinephiles.com is the webpage. Super Cinema Pod on both Twitter and the Instagrams. And if you're interested in being on the show, we've got a contact form on the website. And please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and let us know what you think. That's all for now. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. You have been listening to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at SuperCinemaPod. Join our Facebook group by searching for Superhero Cinephiles, where you can interact with us and other superhero fans. If you'd like to support the show, you can become a regular supporter at Patreon or make a one-time donation through PayPal, both of which can be found at our website, superherocinephiles.com. If you buy or rent any movies through the Amazon links at our site, it helps support the show. Please be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you for listening. And as always, good night, good evening. God bless.